Welcome to Tales of Black. Chanel.
There are some stories you can only believe if you listen all the way through, because if you stop halfway, you'll swear it's a tragedy. But if you stay till the end, you'll realize it's a miracle. Melissa, a poor white girl from the Bronx, had only been on the job for 2 days when she was fired. Why? Because she had the nerve to hold an umbrella over an elderly black woman shivering in the rain and let her sit for shelter inside the office. What she didn't know was that the woman she called Mama was actually the mother of the company's CEO. And what she really didn't know was that the young black CEO, the one who called to fire her without even asking for an explanation, was the same man texting her every night under the name David, posing as a delivery guy just trying to make her smile. But that's not even the most shocking part. This white girl stood in the middle of the office and called out the CEO's girlfriend for mocking a poor black man. What she didn't realize? She had just knocked the crown off the head of the woman who was supposed to become the next Mrs. $1 Million Empire. Later, when she was proposed to at a cheap diner by a man who had nothing but his heart to offer, she said yes. And a few weeks later, she walked into a $1 million mansion on the Upper East Side, only to find her boyfriend, David, standing in the grand hall in a CEO's suit with Mama, that same rain-soaked, trembling black woman, smiling and waiting to welcome her, like a mother welcomes her daughter-in-law. If you think you know who someone is, based on their skin color or their bank account, then you haven't heard this story. Welcome to Tales of Black, where we tell the stories society tries to forget, but the human heart refuses to let go. Chapter 1. Rain in Harlem, March in New York. The sky over Harlem hung heavy, choked with clouds as dark as smoke swirling in alleyway kitchens. No one liked the rain here. It brought garbage floating across cracked sidewalks. It forced early workers to hunch over, dodging filthy puddles. And for the poor, it stripped away whatever dignity the city hadn't already taken. Melissa Carter, a 26-year-old white woman, pulled her frayed coat tighter around her body. Her sneakers had long lost their shape. One hand clutched a cheap crossbody bag to her chest. The other held a clear plastic umbrella. One spoke already broken. Today was only her second day working at Thompson Group, a financial investment firm just outside the city center. She needed this job desperately. Her apartment in the Bronx still had last month's electric bill unpaid. Her mother had passed. Her father had left when she was 10. And besides the dream of one day standing on her own feet, Melissa had nothing else to hold on to. She moved carefully down the slick pavement, passing rows of old red brick buildings. Then she stopped. Beneath the cracked awning of a rundown building, an elderly black woman sat curled up on the cold concrete. Her hair was tangled, her dress drenched in rain, her bare feet caked with mud. She shivered. No umbrella, no coat, no protection. Just two vacant eyes staring out into the street like she'd been sitting there longer than the storm itself. Melissa looked around. People walked past as if she didn't exist. No one stopped, not even a glance of concern. Melissa swallowed hard. Her eyes blinked fast. And then, she stepped forward. Gently, she raised her tiny umbrella above the woman's head. "Ma'am, you'll get sick like this. Here, please take this." Her voice was soft as she offered the umbrella. The woman looked up, eyes cloudy with age, face lined deep with time. But her gaze hadn't given up. "Young lady, I have nowhere to go," the woman whispered. "I just came up from Georgia. I don't know anyone here." Melissa bit her lip. She knew she was running late. But inside, she also knew leaving this woman in the rain, even 1 minute longer, would be wrong. She dug into her pocket, pulled out the last $10 bill she had. "This is all I've got. Please take it. Get something warm to eat. Find somewhere safe to rest." But the woman shook her head, gently pushing the money back. "No, sweetheart, I don't take from those who don't have." Melissa looked at her, and in that moment, saw herself 2 years ago, back when she was homeless. She took a deep breath and spoke quickly. "Then come with me. I'll take you to my office. At least it's dry. I can't just leave you out here." The woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Melissa reached out, took her hand, and helped her to her feet. That hand, it was ice cold. But something about it felt strong. She didn't know whose hand she had just taken, and the woman didn't know that the white girl now holding her arm was about to change her son's life forever. Chapter 2. The Woman with Diamonds and a Heart of Stone. The offices of Thompson Group sat inside a 15-story glass tower on the edge of Midtown New York. Not quite luxurious, but for someone who used to sleep on sidewalks like Melissa, it felt like stepping into a whole different world. As Melissa pushed through the glass doors, rain still dripping from her torn coat, the elderly woman behind her, whose name she now knew was Miss Ruth, walked slowly in, feet wet, shoulders trembling. Inside, the staff were polished, focused on screens or scrolling their phones. No one noticed them. Melissa led Miss Ruth to an empty corner, usually used for storing old files, grabbed some tissues off a desk, and gently wiped the woman's hands. "Sorry, it's not much, but at least it's dry in here." "Sweetheart, this feels like heaven," Miss Ruth whispered, her eyes glistening. Melissa smiled softly. Her heart finally felt a little lighter. With just 10 minutes left before her shift began, she poured a cup of water for the old woman and said, "I'll be gone just a few hours. Just rest here, okay? I'll be back soon." She turned to leave, unaware that the real storm was only beginning. Just then, the exclusive executive elevator pinged open. Heels clicked across the hardwood. Click, clack, click. Brianna Lewis walked in, 27. White. Blonde curls cascading in perfect waves. A designer dress hugging every inch of her curated figure. A handbag that cost more than the entire accounting department made in a month. Brianna didn't work here. She didn't need to. She was the fiancée of CEO David Thompson. And as she once said, all I have to do is show up, and everyone remembers who the real future boss is. Today, she decided to drop by unexpectedly, her version of a surprise inspection of power. As she entered, her eyes swept across the room, instinctively seeking her usual spot near David's desk. But then, she froze. In the far corner sat an old black woman, hair disheveled, dress torn, bare feet tucked beneath her, eyes closed, head lowered. In an office this sleek, climate-controlled, and glimmering with glass and chrome, that image stuck out like ink spilled on sheet music. Brianna frowned. She turned to the receptionist. "Who let that in?" The young woman hesitated. I think Miss Melissa brought her in. She's not doing anything, just sitting quietly." Brianna scoffed. She strode across the room toward Miss Ruth, heels pounding like a verdict. She stood in front of the woman, arms crossed, voice sharp as glass. "What are you doing here? Who gave you permission to sit inside my fiancé's investment firm?" Miss Ruth opened her eyes, slowly looked up. No fear, no reaction, just sadness. "Just trying to stay dry, ma'am. I'll leave if I'm causing trouble." Brianna sneered. "Trouble? No, you're revolting. This isn't a soup kitchen. If you need a place to sleep, I suggest a shelter." "I'm sorry if I caused concern. A young lady brought me in. Who she is doesn't matter." Brianna cut her off. "I'm the one who's about to run this place, and I don't allow people like you in here." That phrase, "people like you," it didn't need explaining. Miss Ruth had heard it all her life. From dresses like that, from handbags like that, from people like her. Miss Ruth rose slowly. "Young lady, I don't need to stay here a minute longer, but before I go," she looked Brianna dead in the eyes. "I hope one day someone looks at you the way you just looked at me, so you'll understand. Not every pair of clean shoes walks the right path." Brianna blinked, just for a second, then flipped her hair, turned away. "Get out and don't come back." The elevator doors closed behind her like a judge's gavel sealing a cruel sentence. Miss Ruth stepped outside. No tears, no protests. Just the eyes of a woman who'd seen far too much cruelty to be shocked by one more insult. A few minutes later, Melissa returned on her break. In her hands, a sandwich and a cup of hot tea, bought with the last coins in her purse. But when she looked towards the corner, it was empty. No mama. Her heart skipped. She rushed out into the hallway and found Miss Ruth standing alone beneath the awning just outside the front doors. Soaked, cold, alone. "Mama, what are you doing out here?" Miss Ruth looked at her gently. A woman came, white, beautiful, expensive, and very cold. She said, "I don't belong here." Melissa felt the chill cut straight to her bones. And then, the fire rose in her chest. She clenched her fists, spun around, and marched back inside the office, each step sharp and furious. She knew exactly who did it, and she was ready to make that perfect little world see itself for what it really was. Chapter 3. The Bronx Girl and a Slap to the Elite. The office of Thompson Group was dead silent. Melissa pushed open the door, her wet hair clinging to the back of her neck, a cup of hot tea still in her hand. She didn't see anyone. She didn't want to see anyone. Her vision blurred with fury. There was only one person in focus. Brianna Lewis, sitting cross-legged in the waiting chair, scrolling her phone like she hadn't just tossed a human being out into the rain. Melissa walked forward, each footstep echoing like a war drum in the quiet room. "You!" Her voice cut the air like a blade. Brianna looked up, a smirk curling on her lips. "Well, well, the little Bronx rat returns. Forgot to close the refugee shelter behind you?" Melissa clenched her fist. Not because of the insult, but because she suddenly realized this woman wasn't just arrogant, she was dangerous. "Who gave you the right to throw an elderly woman out of this building?" "Oh, sweetie, I don't need a right. I have status. I'm the CEO's fiancé. I don't owe explanations to a secretary." Melissa laughed. But it wasn't joy. It was glass shattering on marble. "You call yourself the future of this company, yet you can't even tell the difference between kindness and cruelty. Spare me the dollar store philosophy. I'm not responsible for saving the poor, oppressed black world. I'm a real woman, not a character in your guilt-driven morality play." The whole office froze. Avoidant glances now lifted. Heads turned from behind cubicles. Phones were pulled out. Someone hit record. Melissa didn't blink. "You saw her as dirty, as worthless. But you don't know. She had a family, she had a youth, she had a life, just like you." "Oh, give me a break," Brianna snapped. "I didn't come here to be lectured by some ragged girl trying to claw her way up with fake generosity. You want to play savior? Fine. But don't pretend people like you do anything without a hidden agenda." Melissa stepped closer. Her eyes no longer burned with anger. They glowed with contempt. "You know what, Brianna? I'd rather be a poor girl with dignity than a rich girl with no soul. You dare talk to me like that? Oh, I can do a lot more than talk. If David actually marries someone like you, someone who looks down on the poor, insults the elderly, and judges people by their skin, then I truly feel sorry for him." Brianna shot up, face flushed with rage. "Who are you to tell me anything? I'm a millionaire's daughter. I went to Yale. I've been invited to the Met Gala." Melissa didn't flinch. "Impressive. But I've never seen someone so educated be so uncivilized." Gasps rippled through the office. A few people stifled laughs. Some turned away. But everyone was listening. Brianna hissed, "I swear to God, you're finished. I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Melissa calmly placed the tea on a nearby desk. "I don't want a job at a company where a black elder gets treated like trash. And I sure as hell don't want to work for a CEO dumb enough to marry someone like you." She turned to leave, paused, spoke one last time. Softly, but every soul in the room heard it. "I don't know what kind of man David really is, but if he chose you, I just hope his mother isn't black." And then Melissa walked out. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because she knew that day she didn't just stand up for an old woman in the rain. She stood up for herself, and for everything her heart had ever known to be right. Chapter 4. The call from the man she once called a coward. That afternoon, New York was soaked in gray, as if the weather itself had been slapped by the same fury Melissa unleashed inside Thompson Group. She walked back to the Bronx. No umbrella, no taxi, just her old sneakers now squelching with every step, soaked like sponges. The cup of tea in her hand had long gone cold. Beside her, Miss Ruth walked in silence. She didn't ask questions, because she knew. Today, this young woman had lost more than just a job. She had lost a rare chance. In a world where people like her rarely got second ones, back at the crumbling apartment, Melissa laid out a thin blanket on the floor and helped Miss Ruth sit. "Don't worry, Mama. It's gonna be okay. I'll find another job. As long as you're not standing in the rain again. That's all that matters." Miss Ruth looked at her, eyes soft but heavy with sorrow. "You didn't have to give up so much. For me." Melissa shook her head, letting out a quiet, almost broken laugh. "Some things you don't do for someone. You do them because you can't stand the silence when something's wrong." That night, as Melissa stood over the sink washing dishes, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, no name, just a long, quiet vibration. She wiped her hands, stared at the screen, then picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice, low, composed, but cold like polished steel. "This is David Thompson, CEO of Thompson Group. I was told you brought a homeless woman into the office and caused a scene with my fiancé." Melissa's heart clenched, not out of fear, but because now she finally heard the voice of the man who'd fired her without asking a single question. "I didn't cause a scene," she said flatly. "I brought a shivering elderly woman inside to get out of the rain, and no, I don't apologize for that." There was a pause on the other end. Then David spoke again. "My fiancé told me you insulted and disrespected her in front of the staff." Melissa let out a dry, biting laugh. If telling the truth is considered disrespect, maybe she belongs somewhere truth doesn't exist. "You don't have the right to insult people inside my company. And you? Do you have the right to fire someone just for helping a black woman survive the rain?" Silence. David didn't respond, so Melissa kept going, each word razor sharp. "I'm not surprised. Some men look strong on paper, but are too weak to control their own moral compass without their girlfriend holding the pen." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means if you're the kind of man who lets a designer dress dictate what's right and wrong, maybe your company should be called Thompson and Fiancé." The line went heavy, dense, breathless. "You're insulting me," he said finally. "No, I'm responding to the level of disrespect you showed me. 2 days of work, not a single word from you. One phone call, and I'm out. All because I showed kindness to someone who didn't match your skin tone or your girlfriend's social class." David exhaled, this time softer. Then, surprisingly, his tone shifted. "You know something, Melissa? I didn't personally make that call. I heard it from Brianna and I reacted. I didn't investigate. I didn't verify, and I was wrong." For the first time, Melissa went silent. David continued. "I didn't just call to explain. I want to ask, would you consider coming back? In a new role, closer to me?" Melissa's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I'd like you to be my personal assistant." Melissa sat up straight. Her answer didn't need a moment's thought. If you think a title can undo a mistake, then you've just made another one. "So, you're saying no?" "I'm saying I won't take a job from someone who doesn't have the courage to apologize to me face to face." David hesitated. Then, almost as if retreating into himself, he murmured, "I'll call you again, when I'm ready, to say what needs to be said." Melissa replied, calm but sharp. "Let's hope when that time comes, you're actually being yourself, not just a character written by your girlfriend." She hung up, leaned back against the wall, closed her eyes. Outside, the rain still fell, but inside her, for the first time, there was a voice, loud and clear. She was no longer the girl who got thrown out of an office. She was the woman who made a CEO question who he really was. Chapter 5. A matchmaker's whisper and a mother who was anything but ordinary. That night, in a tiny room in the Bronx, 2 generations, 2 skin tones, 2 stories, slept beneath the same squeaky tin roof. Melissa tucked the thinnest blanket in the house around Miss Ruth. The thicker one. She'd grown used to sleeping with it since last winter. She set a cup of warm tea on the rickety table, then leaned over and gently brushed a few silver strands from Miss Ruth's face. "No more rain tonight, Mama. You're safe now." Miss Ruth didn't speak. She just looked at Melissa for a long, quiet moment, as if she were searching beneath the pale skin, past the tired eyes, for something only a mother could recognize. Finally, she spoke, softly, carefully, with something deliberate in her tone. "Melissa, do you know why I came to New York?" The girl shook her head, pouring more tea into the cup. "I thought you got lost?" Miss Ruth smiled faintly, took a small sip. "No, I came here to find a wife for my son." Melissa chuckled. "Wait, people still do that? Mothers traveling to handpick daughters-in-law? And your son's okay with that?" "He doesn't know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "And I don't need him to. I just needed to see her, touch her, feel something real, before I could even think about saying her name." Melissa froze. Her heart skipped. "Wait, are you saying you mean me?" Miss Ruth nodded, eyes kind and unwavering. "From the moment you gave me that umbrella, from the moment you refused to let me sit in the rain, from the moment you stood up, face to face with someone powerful, just to protect a nameless, barefoot black woman no one cared about." Melissa pulled at her sleeve, her voice light but unsteady. "You sure your son's ready for a white girl, a broke one, who argues too much and lives in the Bronx?" "He better be. If he's still the man I raised, he'll know what matters." "So what does he do?" "Something in finance, not rich. But he gets by, quiet, gentle, still calls his mama every Sunday." Melissa let out a loud laugh. "You're selling this like an ad, Mama. Keep going and I might just buy." "Go ahead," Miss Ruth said, laughing, really laughing for the first time. Their laughter blended with the soft rain tapping against the window. Two hearts slowly drying out in the warmth of something new and safe. Later that night, Melissa curled up in an old sweater in the corner of the kitchen, gnawing at the half sandwich she'd been saving since morning. Miss Ruth watched her, then spoke with a quiet affection. "Melissa, my son doesn't have much money, but he's got a good heart. He doesn't have a big house, but he's got strong shoulders. No fancy suits, but he knows how to wash dishes. And no, he won't promise forever. But if he loves you, he won't leave halfway." Melissa looked up. Something inside her stirred. Something unfamiliar, but comforting. She never believed in the fairy tale of a poor girl marrying a prince, but a mother, with eyes like Miss Ruth's, didn't seem like someone who could lie. "All right then," Melissa whispered, almost playfully. "I'll meet him. Just meet, okay? No wedding bells." That's up to you. But I believe the moment you look in his eyes, you'll see what I saw when I looked into yours." Melissa let out a long breath. Neither of them spoke again. That night, for the first time in years, Melissa slept deeply. Not because she had anything new in her hands, but because, maybe for the first time ever, she felt like she belonged to something good. Chapter 6. A phone too expensive for the poor. The next morning, sunlight crept shyly through the worn-out curtain. The tiny room in the Bronx glowed with a light that was warm and honest. Melissa folded the blanket. Miss Ruth was still sleeping, her breath calm, her face peaceful, as if she'd never been screamed at by the kind of people who called themselves civilized. Melissa turned away and began preparing breakfast. Burnt edge fried eggs and toast. Simple, but real. "Mama," she whispered. "You hungry?" Miss Ruth blinked awake, rising slowly. Melissa handed her a glass of water, then went back to set the table. Just then, a phone rang. Melissa froze. It wasn't her own cheap phone. No. The sound was coming from Miss Ruth's old cloth bag, carefully placed in the corner of the room. With trembling hands, the old woman pulled out a phone. But not just any phone. An iPhone. The latest model. iPhone 14 Pro Max. Midnight Black, 512 byte. Still had the factory sticker on the back. Melissa stood still for one breathless second. The image of the frail old woman curled up in the rain the night before suddenly bent, twisted under the weight of that phone's cold, gleaming reality. Miss Ruth answered, her voice soft, but composed, almost commanding. "David, it's me, Mama." Melissa's eyes widened. "David," she tilted her head, not wanting to listen but unable to look away. A man's voice crackled faintly through the speaker, low, familiar, even weary. "Mama, where are you? I came home and you weren't there." Miss Ruth's voice was warm, calm. "I'm safe. The rain last night led me to a kind young girl. She gave me shelter." There was silence. Then the man spoke again, this time softer. "I haven't been feeling well, Mama. Maybe from all the flying. Please, come home. I miss you." Miss Ruth smiled, a smile Melissa had never seen before. Not that of a poor woman grateful for kindness, but the smile of a woman who knew exactly who she was. "I'll come back tomorrow." She hung up, set the phone down on the table, as if it meant nothing at all. Melissa, meanwhile, was reeling. She sat down, stared at the woman across from her. "Mama, who was that?" "My son." "David, the one you mentioned yesterday?" "Yes, that's him. And you said he wasn't rich?" Miss Ruth let out a gentle cough, then sipped her water. "Well, not rich by rich people standards. He's got a job, a modest apartment, knows how to save." Melissa glanced at the iPhone. She raised an eyebrow. "That phone doesn't scream modest." Miss Ruth burst out laughing. And for the first time in this conversation, her performance cracked just enough to reveal the velvet underneath. "Ah, well, Mama loves her Shonda's Kitchen on YouTube. I'm obsessed, actually. David got me that phone so I could watch the recipes in full HD. No lag, no buffering." Melissa squinted, half joking, half serious. "All that for banana bread?" "Exactly. If I miss Shonda's banana pudding tutorial, my whole week is ruined." They laughed. But in Melissa's mind, a new question began to write itself. Bold, italic, underlined. She didn't say anything, but she knew. People don't just give their mothers a $2,500 iPhone because of banana pudding. That night, Melissa lay on the old mattress, eyes wide open, staring at the cracked ceiling. Miss Ruth was asleep, the phone safely back in her bag. Melissa wasn't angry, just curious. She'd known real homelessness. She'd been there. But Miss Ruth felt different. The way she spoke, the way she moved, the way she looked at people. It wasn't just kindness, it was worn-down royalty. If she wasn't lying, then who was she? And if her son really was David, was it the David? The CEO? Melissa closed her eyes. She didn't have all the pieces, but something deep inside her whispered, this game had just begun. Chapter 7. The Gates of the Mansion and the First Truth Uncovered. The next morning, the sky above New York was unusually clear. No rain, no gloom, just sunlight, spilling gold across the leafless trees lining the road. Miss Ruth left the Bronx. No one waved goodbye. No tears. Melissa simply stood at the doorway, her smile faint, unsure if this was goodbye for now, or goodbye for good. Miss Ruth only said, "Don't worry. If things go well, I'll call you to meet my son." Melissa nodded quietly, watching her step into the old taxi and disappear down the road. 30 minutes later, the taxi stopped in front of a towering black iron gate over 10 feet high, gilded with gold swirls. Marble plaque gleaming in white letters. 24B, Parkview Estate, Upper East Side. The driver looked over, frowning in confusion. Ma'am? You sure this is the right address? This is millionaire territory. I thought you were..." Miss Ruth smiled gently. "I live here. Sometimes, even the rich need to dress like the poor to remember where they came from." The driver blinked, said nothing more. The gate opened slowly. 2 guards in black suits stepped out, eyes narrowed with suspicion. One raised his radio and spoke in a low voice. We've got an elderly black woman outside. Clothes are torn. Says she's the boss's mother? Silence. Then a sharp female voice crackled through the radio. Cool, high, as sharp as champagne shattering on marble. Don't let her in. I'm coming out. Moments later, the mansion doors swung open. Brianna Lewis emerged. Same figure. Body-hugging designer dress. Red stilettos. Lipstick bold. Eyes colder than the stone beneath her heels. She walked straight toward the gate. Like a queen come to sentence a peasant. And when she saw Miss Ruth, wearing a tattered coat, her Bronx mud-stained shoes still damp, her expression twisted. Not with surprise, not even fear, just disgust. You again? Yes. Are you insane? You followed me here? I didn't follow you, I'm coming home. Brianna laughed, head tilted back, mockery dripping from every syllable. You think this is some shelter you stumbled into? This is a mansion. David Thompson's mansion, my fiancé. This isn't a place for bottle collectors. Miss Ruth stayed silent. Then, calmly, as if commenting on the weather, I'm David Thompson's mother. Brianna let out a single, jagged laugh, like glass hitting marble. You're out of your mind. No, wait, you're performing. You're good, I'll give you that. But this ain't the Oscars. Now get the hell out. Miss Ruth's gaze sharpened. Gone was the sorrow. What remained was judgment. The kind only a woman who'd spent her life watching the powerful lie could give. You're marrying David, and you've never met his mother? You think I'm bluffing? Call him. Right now. Not a chance. I won't let him see you like this. I'm trying to protect his name, keep some dignity in the family. You don't understand. Dignity isn't in clothes or nails. It's in how you treat someone who has nothing to offer you. Spare me the sermons. Someone like you should be lucky to be breathing. Leave this property before I call the police. Miss Ruth let out a long breath. Not fearful, not angry. Just tired. I used to think David was just blinded by love. But if today he chooses you, then I'll be the one who walks away. Good. Walk faster, and don't ever come back. This isn't the slum you crawled out of. The gate slammed shut in her face, a verdict written in iron, sentencing her for the crime of not belonging. Miss Ruth didn't move. She didn't cry. She simply reached into her old cloth bag and pulled out that gleaming iPhone, catching the morning light. She dialed. Her voice, tight with hurt, but unwavering. David, I'm standing outside your gate, and I've never felt more disrespected in my life. If you still plan to marry that woman, then don't count me among the guests. Silence. Then David's voice, barely a whisper. Mama, I'm on my way, don't go anywhere. She ended the call. No. She hadn't been allowed through the gate. But she knew the more important door had just started to open. The one inside her son's heart. Chapter 8. When the richest man walked out as a son. The black Range Rover tore down the cobblestone street of Upper East Side, like a storm crashing through polished marble and quiet wealth. Before the windows even rolled down, neighbors had already turned their heads. Some whispered, "That's David Thompson, youngest CEO of Thompson Group." He slammed the brakes at the gates of 24B and saw her, his mother, standing alone in a faded dress, shoulders trembling, eyes holding a pain too deep for words. David swung the door open. He didn't care about the $1 million watch on his wrist, didn't care about the Italian suit clinging to him. There was only one instinct left in him, be a son. "Mama!" he called out, rushing forward. Miss Ruth looked up. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. No words, just the raw ache of a love that had been bruised, now clawing its way back to what's right. David held her by the shoulders. "What happened? Who did this to you? Why were you left out here?" She didn't answer. She just looked into his eyes. "David, you really have to ask? I came to your office, I was thrown out, I came to your home, I was humiliated. I came to find out who you were marrying. And she showed me exactly who she is." David clenched his fists. "Brianna, what did she do?" Just then, the iron gate creaked open. Brianna Lewis appeared. Same tight dress, same bold red lips. But this time, her face was pale. She froze when she saw David's expression. Not love, not pride, just coldness and disappointment. "David, you're back!" I didn't know she was your mother. I thought she was just someone asking for money." David's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You called her a beggar. You kicked her out of my office. You laughed at her, right here, in front of the very house she helped me buy, with the decades of her life." Brianna's voice trembled. I didn't recognize her. I'm sorry. I swear I didn't know." David shook his head slowly. "You didn't need to know, because people like you don't need to know who's poor or in pain. You only need to know who offends your image, so you can tear them down." "David!" "No," he cut her off. For the first time, he didn't let her finish. "I used to think I needed a strong woman, a woman with presence. But now I see, strength isn't in how you walk into a room. It's in how you let someone walk out of your life. With dignity." The courtyard went silent. David turned to his mother. His voice softened. "Mama, I'm sorry. You gave up everything so I could build this name, and I let her sit beside me at the dinner table." Miss Ruth said nothing. She only squeezed his hand. Brianna reached for one last thread. "David, don't throw everything away over a misunderstanding. We've built so much." He turned to her, voice steady, words sharp as glass. "I'm not throwing anything away. You did that the moment you mocked someone for their torn shoes instead of asking how far they'd walked in them. I once chose you, because I thought you matched my world. But today I choose myself, and I will never choose you again." Brianna stood frozen. No one told her to leave, but she understood. She had just been erased from the life of a man she thought she owned. She turned, walked back into the mansion. Not like a queen, but like a shadow being swallowed by silence. David turned to his mother, took her hand. "Let's go home, Mama. This was enough." And in that moment, the richest man on the Upper East Side was not a CEO, not a millionaire, but a son who showed up just in time. Chapter 9. A park bench meeting, and all the things left unsaid. Riverside Park, New York, 2:00 p.m. A soft breeze rustled through lush green trees. Wooden benches soaked in spring sunlight lined the path. Kids played tag. Old men read newspapers. And one man sat alone. He clutched a plastic coffee cup. An old, beat-up phone rested beside him. No suit, no watch, no assistant, no driver. Just David. Today, he wasn't the CEO. He wasn't anyone important. He was simply David, a freelance worker barely making it past each month's bills, wearing a faded gray t-shirt, ripped jeans, and sneakers so worn they looked like they had stories of their own. He checked his phone again, one last time. 2 p.m., bench near the big tree, across from the hot dog stand. Melissa had confirmed she was coming. David exhaled, hands tightening slightly. Not from nerves, but from the strange weight of showing up with no title, no armor. Exactly at 2 o'clock, she arrived. Melissa, wearing a simple blue dress, old but clean sandals, hair tied up neatly. Still the same girl, with eyes that didn't flinch, and a laugh that sounded like it had been through storms, but still chose sunlight. David stood. "Melissa? David?" They looked at each other. A pause. Not awkward. Just instinctual, like two people trying to read the truth behind skin and smiles. "Mind if I sit?" she asked gently. They sat. David broke the ice. "Thanks for coming. My mom, she talks about you a lot." Melissa smiled. "Zoe, and I know almost nothing about you, except that you're not rich. True, not much to show. A few odd jobs, I scrape by. And yet, you bought your mom an iPhone so she could watch banana bread tutorials?" Her tone teased, just enough to be warm. David laughed, almost choked, then nodded. "Hey, Shonda's banana bread is sacred." They both burst out laughing. Laughter faded into a soft stillness. The kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. The good kind. Melissa spoke again. "Honestly, I don't really believe in setups, but your mom? She's the first person who ever made me want to try believing." David nodded. "She has a gift, used to test every girl I dated. First 3 months were always secret interviews. So, am I on trial right now? Melissa tilted her head, playful, but not entirely joking. David met her gaze, steady. No, I'm the one being tested. Trying to see if I can open up to someone I barely know. Except for one thing. She's kind. Melissa's voice dropped to a gentle truth. Kindness isn't enough to live on, but sometimes it's enough to start something right. David went quiet. That line? It hit somewhere deep. A place he'd covered with business cards and accolades for too long. They talked for nearly an hour. Not about resumes or LinkedIn profiles, but about things that didn't make it into cover letters. Melissa spoke of her mother, who died of cancer. Of the nights she slept on these very benches. David shared about his days as a delivery driver, getting stiffed on tips, and the first time he learned his mom took out loans to pay his college tuition. No stories of cars, stocks, or real estate, just truths. And between them, a fragile, unexpected thing began to take shape. Trust. As the sun began to dip gold across the trees, Melissa stood. I should go. Dinner to cook. Mama Ruth's waiting. David stood too. Can I call you again? Not to flirt, just to hear your voice on days when mine feels too heavy. Melissa smiled. This time, genuinely. Soft, a little shy. If I answer, that means you're allowed to. She turned, took a few steps, then stopped, looked over her shoulder. Oh, your name. Sounds like someone I once worked for. David Thompson. David swallowed. No, just a name. I'm not nearly as impressive as guys like that. Melissa shrugged. Funny. The ones worth trusting usually don't need to prove they're impressive. She smiled one last time and walked away, leaving David alone on that bench. With a coffee gone cold, a phone still old, and a heartbeat suddenly full of something very, very real. Chapter 10. An invitation back and the final line. 2 days after their quiet park meeting, Melissa returned to her modest rhythm, washing dishes at a tiny diner, filling out job applications at night, and staying in touch with Mama Ruth. A woman she now saw as a second mother. That evening, while scrubbing laundry by the old sink, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but this time her heart didn't tense with dread. It raced. Hello? A familiar voice. Melissa, it's me, David. Oh, hey. She smiled, sitting down on the edge of her bed. I wanted to ask you something. David's voice was tighter than before. Gone was the easy calm from the park. There's an opening at my company, executive assistant. I spoke to the board about you. They approved, if you're interested. But this time, you wouldn't be just any employee. You'd report directly to the top. Melissa clenched the phone. Her pulse didn't just rise. It remembered. The looks, the insults, the unceremonious firing without a single question asked. She took a breath. David. Her voice was slow, measured. You know I used to work there, right? I do. And you know why I left? Yes, I know that too. Then why ask me to return to a place where I was treated worse than an old woman seeking shelter? David paused, then answered, firm, low. Because this time, you wouldn't be standing in the shadows. You'd see everything, and be treated the way you deserve. Melissa let out a dry, wary laugh. Sounds like someone trying to atone for someone else's sins. Why so? Maybe, David admitted. Or maybe I just want to prove that not every man named David Thompson is a coward. That stopped her cold. He knew. He'd heard what she said. Knew she once called the CEO a man too weak to stand up without a woman pulling the strings. Her cheeks flushed with heat. But her voice stayed even. If I say yes, are there conditions? David answered quickly. Just one, professionalism. No titles, no history. Melissa didn't flinch. And if the top boss starts falling for his assistant? Silence. David hadn't expected that. He steadied his voice. Then the boss better learn to hold his lines. Because the workplace isn't a place to gamble with people's hearts. Melissa nodded. He couldn't see it, but he felt it. Good. Because I'm not applying for emotional support staff. Only if the job respects me. David exhaled. Agreed. Then, I'll give it a shot. One more time. The next morning, Melissa stepped into the Thompson Group tower. For the first time since the day she walked out with a cold cup of tea and a burning chest, the receptionist greeted her with a nod. No one dared meet her the way they once had. She was led to the top floor, a place she'd never been before. Executive assistant, private office, a whole different world. The CEO's door opened, and there he was, David. Behind the desk, in a tailored gray suit, hair neatly styled, but eyes still holding the man she once shared laughter with on a park bench. Her heart skipped, but her face showed none of it. "Good morning, boss." Her tone was crisp, measured. David stood, nodded. "Good morning, Melissa. Welcome back." They looked at each other, and in that gaze, they were no longer boss and assistant. They were two people standing on the edge of a truth that hadn't yet spoken its name. Chapter 11. Dinner, an invitation, and a line tested. Melissa never imagined her first day back at Thompson Group would feel so different. No one whispered behind her back. No eyes looked at her with that familiar condescension. Because now, she sat on the top floor. Her office was just a few steps away from the CEO's. And in that CEO's seat sat David. Polished, composed, professional. But still, something in his gaze softened whenever it landed on her. They worked in sync. No one mentioned the past. No one brought up the rainy Bronx afternoon or the cold cup of tea until that dinner. It was a Friday evening. Melissa was tidying her desk when David stepped out of his office. "Melissa." "Yes, sir?" He hesitated. Didn't call her you. Didn't use any casual tone. But his eyes said more than his words. I was thinking of grabbing dinner. There's a new place nearby. They're looking for feedback. Would you be free?" Melissa looked up. The question sounded harmless, but something about it stepped just slightly outside of work hours. She smiled lightly, stood, and nodded. "If it's part of my duties, I'm happy to assess their service quality." David blinked, slightly surprised. That answer, so very Melissa, smart, clear, untouchable. Right, just service evaluation." "Good, but one condition. The company pays, not the boss's personal wallet." David chuckled, this time, genuinely. "I wouldn't dare argue." The restaurant was a cozy little French place. Soft golden lights, jazz humming from the corners. David and Melissa sat across from each other, menus in hand. But their minds weren't on food. "Melissa," David began once the waiter walked away. "Yes? I just want to say thank you for coming back, for trusting me, even though I gave you no reason to." Melissa looked at him for a long beat, then gently set her silverware down. "I didn't come back for you. I came back for me, because I refused to let someone else define my worth." "I understand. And I chose to work here again because for the first time, I was picked without having to pretend to be someone I'm not." David nodded. His eyes shimmered slightly. He drew a breath, about to speak, but Melissa cut in. "If this dinner is the start of anything outside work, I'll have to end it here." David froze. Not hurt, just taken aback by how clearly she'd drawn the line. "I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." "You didn't, I just know. If I stay silent again, I'll end up being misread all over again. Just because I didn't know how to play the part." Silence. David placed his hand on the table, not touching hers, just near. A quiet signal. "I promise, your boundaries are law. I'll never cross them. Unless you open that door." Melissa looked down, then back up. Her eyes weren't cold, but they weren't soft either. "Good, because I don't need a rich man. I need a man who keeps his word." The meal went on, unforced, natural. They talked about work, upcoming projects, financial strategies. No one mentioned feelings, because that night, Melissa wasn't a girl being courted. She was a woman who set the boundary, and was respected for it. Chapter 12. A backward date, when the poor invite the rich to dinner. Saturday morning, David sat in a corner of a small cafe in Brooklyn, a place where no one knew he was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar finance firm. Wearing a hoodie, sneakers faded from wear, hands wrapped around a latte cup. He looked like just another guy getting by. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. Melissa, are you free this evening? David, I am. Melissa, good, 6 p.m. I'm taking you to dinner. David, you're treating? Melissa, yes, don't argue, it's my turn. David, okay, but are you sure I'm built for cheap spots? Melissa, I didn't choose cheap, I chose real. David laughed out loud, closed his laptop, and nodded. To no one but himself. Tonight, the roles would reverse. $6 a p.m., Mama D's Diner, Bronx. A small corner restaurant with red and white checkered tablecloths, homemade apple pie, fried chicken, and mashed potatoes. No glass tables, no wine list, no jazz playing softly in the background. Just laughter, sizzling oil, and the warmth of people who know how to love with food. David walked in, and there she was, Melissa, sitting near the window. Simple floral dress, hair tied up. No makeup, but glowing like the day she first held an umbrella for a stranger. You made it, she smiled. I did, but I'm a little nervous, David teased. Nervous? First time a woman's treated me to dinner, where I knew we weren't splitting the bill. Melissa burst into laughter. Well then, eat all you can. This might be the only time you get the invite. They ordered fried chicken, mashed potatoes, apple pie, and soda. Not French cuisine, no customer feedback required. Just 2 people, and a dinner that meant exactly what it said. During the meal, Melissa shared stories. Her first dinner out, at 17, paid for with dishwashing wages. Every bite of apple pie tonight brought her back to that moment. David talked about the time he pretended to be poor, and a group of kids almost stuck chewing gum to his shoes, thinking he was homeless. Melissa nearly choked laughing. Honestly, I like your fake poor version better. David paused, then nodded quietly. I'm starting to like being real more than being rich. When the meal ended, Melissa waved for the check. She pulled out a few wrinkled bills, counted them with care. David watched, said nothing. The server picked up the cash, then gave David a curious look. Sorry, but you look really familiar. Weren't you on CNBC once? David stood quickly, smiling. Nope. Happens all the time. Guess I've got one of those faces. Melissa looked up, eyes narrowing just a little. The server nodded awkwardly and left. David pulled her chair back, still smiling. Shall we? She rose, but something inside her stirred. They walked home under soft streetlights, the city breathing slow, their pace matching it. Then Melissa broke the silence. You once said, you had nothing but your hands and your heart. That's true. Then let me ask you this, honestly. Are you hiding something? David stopped. Because of that waiter? No, because of my instinct. He turned to her, didn't flinch. I'll tell you the truth, but not now. First, I need to know, if you love a poor man, what exactly do you love him for? Melissa didn't blink. For truth, for kindness, for the kind of eyes that don't sell themselves just to be admired. David nodded slowly, then whispered, So when you find out I'm not poor, will you still love me? Melissa froze. Not angry, not shocked, just silent, because deep down she knew the next chapter of her life was about to begin. Chapter 13. The Truth Revealed, and a Proposal Without a Ring. 2 days after their dinner at Mama D's, Melissa received a message. David, I need to say this, fully, as who I really am. 7 p.m. tonight. My mother invited you to the house. No makeup, just come. And listen. Melissa stared at the text. House, not apartment. She knew this wasn't just an invitation, it was a reveal. 6:58 p.m. She stood in front of the gates of 24B, Parkview Estate, Upper East Side. The first time she came here, it was for Mama Ruth. This time, it was to face the man she once believed was as broke as her. She took a deep breath and stepped through the wrought iron gates that once denied an old woman shelter, now wide open for a girl who once ate bread on a rainy sidewalk. Mama Ruth greeted her with a warm smile. "You came." Melissa embraced her tightly. No words, just arms and hands that squeezed gently. Enough to remind each other that trust still lived here. At the end of the hallway stood David. White shirt, no tie, no suit, just him. His gaze was steady. No small talk, no pretense. Just one sentence. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Melissa didn't nod, didn't shake her head. She simply sat across from him. David sat, then spoke. "I'm the CEO of Thompson Group. The man you once called a coward, controlled by his girlfriend. That was me. I heard the whole thing. That day you got fired. I was listening. And I wasn't ashamed because you were wrong. I was ashamed because you were right." Melissa didn't flinch. David continued. "My mother, the woman you call Mama, taught me something. If you want to know who truly loves you, show up with empty hands." "So I did, with you. I didn't know you'd shelter my mother in the rain. Didn't know you'd risk your job for a stranger. I only knew you were real, in your eyes, your voice, the way you drew lines and never blurred them." He stood up, walked over, and knelt. No ring box, no diamonds. Just a hand and a heart stripped of everything else. "Melissa Carter, you once said you don't need a rich man. You need a man who keeps his word. I can't promise I'll always be right, but I promise, from this moment on, everything you know about me will be the truth. No games, no tests, no masks, just me. A man asking you to walk with him, toward whatever kindness we can build together." Silence. Melissa looked at him. No tears, no trembling. Just one question. "Why me?" David met her eyes. "Because you were the only one who stood in the rain, in the mud, and still chose to be human when no one else would stop." A single heartbeat passed. Melissa leaned down, took his hand. "Then get up, don't kneel. Let's begin here. No one above, no one below." The house exhaled. From the hallway, Mama Ruth stepped forward, smiling through tears. "All right then. Now let me go call the cook. No one gets engaged on an empty stomach." They all laughed. 1 year later, there were no fireworks, no luxury cars, no $1,000,000 dresses. Just one photo hung in the center of the reception. A girl holding a cheap plastic umbrella over an old woman in the rain. And beneath it, the words, "They say love is fate, but we believe love is a choice." And that day, she chose to stop in the rain when no one else would. Dear listener, some loves don't begin with flowers, but with a heart soaking wet in the rain. No vows were spoken, only silent acts that no one noticed. If you've ever been the one who stopped in the middle of a rushing crowd, just to hold the hand of someone the world forgot, you are not alone. You are not weak. You are simply strong enough to choose what's right, even when no one else does. If this story touched something in you, leave a comment below. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories of quiet goodness in a world too loud with deception. Tales of Black, where the legends of black souls are told. Not through glory, but through scars that turned into something sacred.